Welcome to episode 31 of the Spy Squadron podcast. I am Reese Babb, and he is James Brill. And we're here to talk to you about... It's a really nice shirt, actually. Hold on, that's a really nice shirt.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, nice shirt.
Actually, I really like your shirt too.
What colour is your shirt?
I believe
It's green.
Yeah.
We're talking about green.
We are talking about green. We're wearing lovely green shirts to show that off. But why are we talking about green? Well, we're talking about green because...
Ooh. It's a colour in Star Wars.
It is. Green is a very interesting colour in Star Wars.
Green is a... We had a brief chat about this. In Star Wars Unlimited Set 1, I think that the colours have split in half and they have become a dominant and a complementary. And I don't think the leaders fall into that, but I think the packages in the decks fall into it. And I think red and blue are leading dominant colours, and I think green and yellow are complementary because all of the packages that come from them make up nice complementing. For instance, Obi-Wan McBride, Seasoned Shore Trooper, like that kind of stuff you're fitting in the deck, but it's not necessarily like majority green. Most of the deck is the other color you run with it, whether it's red or whether it's blue, because they've got so many more, I guess, tangible meta options comparatively. And we've got a great two decks to show off to exemplify that.
After that really surprising gameplay that we had,
I didn't
go
expect
check that one out. That one was very interesting. We've kind of been humbled a little bit on what we thought was better than the other.
I thought I was going to get wrecked. I'm not going to lie.
And I definitely had my SWU world shifted a little bit on where certain leaders lie in the pack.
I think this, again, as we discussed last week, and the week before, this really goes to show you that all leaders can win.
Yeah. We've said it last week. We'll say it this week. We'll probably say it next week.
Probably.
But at the end of the day, leaders can just win. They can win for different reasons because they're doing different things for different things.
Yeah.
Maybe they specifically counter another deck. Yeah. But at the end of the day, sometimes you got to be careful against every leader you come across because they can just take wins away.
If you just sit there and you're like, I'm playing the best deck in the game, nothing can beat me, and you sit down against a player and you're like, loser, I got you. They're probably going to kick your butt.
Yeah. And that's something that we're just going to continuously repeat every single gameplay you see. And yeah, you'll be like, but you just played badly, and maybe we did. But at the end of the day, you're going to play badly every now and then. And you're going to misplay every now and then. And if someone else takes advantage of that and does the right things, then yeah, the worst deck in the game is going to beat the best deck in the game.
It's just how it is. Sometimes deck construction doesn't equate to skill. Obviously, deck construction is a skill, and skill in the card game is a skill. So it just matters what you're getting into. But first...
Did you say skill in a card game is a skill?
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Star Wars, Skill Wars Unlimited.
Skill Wars Unlimited.
What are we starting off with, Chief?
We are starting off with... I was chosen to do a more meta build today. I chose to go with...
Palpatine.
Palpatine because I played too much Leia and didn't want to anymore.
That's honestly so valid. I remember when I was saying I was excited for Red Green Leia. And I thought it would be really good. And I like the deck a lot. It's exactly what I thought it would be. Too bad everyone's doing it, and now I've seen it so much that I'm like, cool, I know what the deck does. I don't need to play it.
Yeah, pretty much. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now we're going to talk about this blue Palpatine build that I have. It's a very interesting build. It is a deck that I think a lot of people kind of have agreed kind of unanimously is very, very good against mid-range to late-game decks. It's not so good against anything that gets ramping up from very early.
Yeah, aggro really hammers it.
And there's certain times where if you don't see your pieces, you can fall into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. And that's the control... That's the control problem, right? Like, is if you miss or brick, because realistically, control's biggest issue is that it bricks. Because I feel like most control decks can have a higher chance of bricking because they run control pieces, and control pieces usually fall into the category of events. So if you don't see what you need. A lot of the time you're running out of units, running low on that stuff, and you're just seeing events, or if you're only seeing units and not seeing the events you need, control decks, for me personally, or at least that's from my observation in card games, have a higher brick potential than mid-range decks. Like I think kind of like a bell curve, aggro and control probably have the same amount of bricking power, whereas value is designed to get around that problem, which is why they end up sparking archetypes. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those cases where if you go and watch the gameplay video, you'll understand kind of what we're talking about. But there's a lot about this deck that can really struggle when it's not versing the decks it was designed to go up against.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the key things about a lot of decks in certain metas. Like this deck could win a tournament if the meta is very heavily towards...
It was like Krennic or Iden or like Boba Control or something like that. I think this deck stomps. I think against Vader Ramp it's really good because you just steal the big pieces. But when it's against a deck that has expendable bodies that it can just keep throwing at you.
Yeah. It really struggles to get all that removal out because blue is fantastic because it has unmitigated removal. It's a big word that gets thrown around. But it's also really expensive removal.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to...
4, and 5 is pretty tough, especially when your opponent's playing a 2-cost 2/3. And you're like, is that really worth Power of the Dark Side?
Yeah. And it's one of those cases where a lot of times you just have to do it anyway.
Yeah. You just kind of have to bite the bullet. Yeah.
But talking about the deck, we're going to go over kind of like what we kind of do to try and mitigate that early game a little bit.
What its main engines are.
What its main engines are. We're going to go over a couple cards that kind of facilitate that early game. And to me, the big, probably 3 would be Regional Governor, Yularen, and ERG.
Emperor's Royal Guard.
Guard.
Officials, really good cards. Turns out having Yularen who heals is really nice on a 2/3 body, and turns out having a 1/4 that when you name a card your opponent can't play, it's really good. And turns out they're even better when they turn on a 3/5 Sentinel.
Absolutely, and that's the big thing. Like that Emperor's Royal Guard is always going to be a 3/5 while you have Palpatine as your leader, and excuse me. And giving it Sentinel only makes it better.
We played lots of games today. Our brains are worn out. But not worn out enough to not talk about Swoo.
Talk about Swoo.
Weirdly enough as well, Admiral Body turns on the ERG if you're in a really dire situation. But a 3/5 Sentinel really puts a wrench in decks like Sabine. Because comparatively, where, interestingly enough, this deck has a much harder time against villain aggro than it does hero aggro. Yeah. Hero aggros are small bodies. Villain aggros are, honestly, frankly, mediocre. Like, they're not... The general stat line is a 2/3, whereas for hero, it's more of like a 1/3. And then obviously having Tarkin on that, where I can buff them up. Or something like that. So it can struggle a little bit against that, but if you're not playing against a villain aggro deck, which are, frankly, few and far between, you're not really in too much trouble. And having that big boy, plus chuck an Electro Staff on him for good measure.
Yeah, absolutely. The Electro Staff is really powerful, but unfortunately that turns it into like a 3-card combo, which can a lot of the time be not particularly consistent, especially without any sort of draw in the early game. Like, you can pop your own units that draw in the early game, but that, unfortunately, that ability is not used in probably the first 3 or 4 turns unless you have you're already pretty far ahead on board. So it's pretty tough in that situation. Palpatine kind of is a blank leader for the first 3 turns. And it's one of those things where Emperor's Royal Guard is kind of designed to help that out and keep that kind of rolling through.
I think that a turn 1 Inferno 4 is really good for a number of reasons. This is another, like, if you're like, okay, I'm struggling against Sabine, how's it deal with A-Wing? Well, this is how. You Inferno 4 turn 1, swing into the A-Wing, and then ping and kill the Inferno 4 with Palpatine's ability, which will ping the A-Wing 4 and kill it. And then you get to scry 2 and draw 1. Like, look at the top 2, put them back on bottom of your selective draw. You've still got 2 resources. That means you can drop a Yularen, Governor, another Inferno 4, Shore Trooper. It's pretty solid stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It does run a little bit into the hands of a wing leader, but most of the time you're going to be able to clear away that space in it before it really.
You take down. Like, of course, this deck runs the big ones. You've got Devastator, Avenger, Vader. I think Vader. There's something worth mentioning here that we saw the other day at our locals that made us go, oh. One really nice play that this deck can do is if you get the early game ramp against decks like Boba Fett, you can play the Vader and get a Death Trooper to deal 7 damage into Boba Leader in one action.
Yeah, Boba Leader,
Boba, Iden, any leader really.
Yeah,
you can kill any leader that's not Vader or Palp.
Yeah.
Or Thrawn.
Because you can activate the ability, drop the Death Trooper to ping the shield off Iden, then swing into Iden. That is, that you do choose the order of those operations.
Because you can choose to resolve the one play before you resolve the ambush. They're both one play defects, you get to pick. So pretty sweet stuff. There's a lot of awesome stuff that leader can do, and that specific card combo that's run in that deck can do. It's got access to a lot of big stuff, and then let's not forget, your opponent is out there, and they're chilling, and they lean back in their chair and they go, pay 7. Galactic Ambition Devastator in. I'll take 10 life. And you go, whoa, okay. Ping it for 1. Flip my leader. Is that 20 free damage?
Sure is.
I mentioned this because it actually happened.
It's one of those situations where like the Palpatine leader is fantastic. When you reach that kind of later in the game, you can really easily stabilize it and cause and just do a lot of crazy shenanigans, draw lots of cards, have all the answers, which is one of the reasons why against those kind of bigger decks that we were talking about, the ones that do want to wait to the late game, he does extremely well.
But, there's a big but, he has to make it there.
Yeah.
Now, I think that we've had a discussion off camera recently, and I found myself coming back to it a few times, that there are some leaders in this game that have all the pieces they need in set 1. And there are other leaders which I think are more powerful than the current leaders in the pool. And they're here, they already exist, but they don't have all the pieces they need. And I think come 1 or 2 sets, those leaders are just full stop better than the other ones. And I think a lot of them, like I think Palpatine is one of them. I think Palpatine's already shown that he can exceptionally beat most mid-range control decks, and that doesn't strike me as changing.
No, absolutely not. I think this deck is a very fun deck, and it's a very interesting deck, and it's a deck that I definitely think you should try out in a way that it is going to be really interesting against all those mid-range decks. You can beat those aggro decks. I don't think it's like an official loss as soon as you put it down against it. It does have the tools to be able to beat it. But on the other hand, it does struggle against them, which all decks struggle against something. Like if you think a deck is completely unbeatable, I assure you will be able to find something that targets its weaknesses and takes it out.
I will say that if you struggle to beat aggro, one of the easiest plays blue can do to stifle aggro is if you're going first, hold the Power of the Dark Side. Use it turn 2. Play something, turn 2 comes around, Power of the Dark Side, their turn 1 play.
Yeah.
It seems silly, but it's really good. And then chances are, if they play something small, you probably have the resources to kill it. So
yeah, it's one of those things where that Power of the Dark Side is really good, especially if like coming against a Sabine or Leia deck, which is traditional for wing leadering their turn 1 play. Well, if they don't have a turn 1 play and they
A-wing.
don't have any other play, they were waiting just to wing leader it, suddenly they're in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah, you can play 3 and play a wing leader. Can't put anything on it though, but you can play it. You get 2-1. How good's that?
Wow.
Really cool. But I think that's like Palpatine accentuates kind of what we already know about blue and blue-green. Is that there's a lot of good cards. And like obviously the green package in this deck is made up of the general villain stuff. Devastators, Overwhelming Barrages, Shore Troopers, Vaders.
Yeah.
That's kind of the complementary green villain package.
Yeah,
If
as
you
well as
build-
your ramp package in there with the Death Star
DJ,
DJ
and then resupply. If you're running green villain, you're running pretty much 3 of all of that. Maybe Devastators, 2, maybe you're running none depending on your deck. But the rest of it is almost a hard 3 of in everything. I'm very excited to talk about Shore Troopers art, but we're going to do an art episode later. I just really like that art. I think it's worth bringing up. But we will be doing that in the future. Probably after I'd say like after we've done this, after next week, which is yellow, we'll probably do an episode focusing on the art of set 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that'd be really fun.
I've definitely been advocating for that for a while. I love the art of SWU, and I think it's really cool. It's going to be really fun to showcase our favorite arts and what we think of them.
For sure. Showcase. But Palpatine, overall, I will just put it out there, blue-green villain currently, no matter what you're running, if it's Iden, Palpatine, or Krennic, it's pretty much the same deck.
Yeah.
There's a few slight differences and changes you make. Like, I know that Iden wants to run, like, Hask and things like that, whereas Krennic likes to run the Cargo Juggernaut, and Palpatine gets ERG. But there isn't really a difference.
No, a lot of them function fairly similarly. Palpatine is my choice of the 3, just because I enjoy it a lot. I like the way the deck functions, which is why I picked it for this week. But essentially, any of those 3 decks can kind of be supplemented in for this one. Yeah. It kind of functions very similarly and kind of fills the same role in the meta.
Yeah. Blue-green control is probably like the best archetype currently in the game because it has the most not varied decks, but you can build it very open-endedly with a lot of leaders. Whereas like green Boba is green Boba. You can't, there's no, like it's just that. Whereas if you're going green blue villain, yeah, a lot of it's same, but it is different.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably the most common color pairing, I would say. And that's not to like to turn down. I think it's great, and I think there's a reason it's probably the most common. I mean, if you ask for my personal opinion, I think Krennic's the best out of the 3.
I would agree with that in a general like objective setting, rather than like personally, I do like the Palpatine more, but I do think if I was going to a big event tomorrow, it would probably be Krennic, and the Krennic that won that Nationals.
Oh yeah,
tournament.
that deck looks fun.
Yeah, that deck was very interesting, and obviously because it won, very strong.
That's probably what I'll play. There's a big tournament. But our main reason for saying that is Palpatine, out of the 3 leaders, has the best stat line. He's the most offensive, and he has the most unique and frankly powerful ability. The problem is, once again, you got to get there. Whereas Iden is fine. I think that's the thing, is the deck really carries Iden. Iden doesn't do much for the deck. I played the Krennic version, I played the Iden version, and I must say that I prefer having the additional breakpoint damage and the consistent heal, the better body, and the flip a turn earlier. I prefer all of that than I prefer Iden.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, Iden's shielded, but she still dies to takedown. And you know what doesn't? Krennic. And you know who runs takedown?
Everyone.
So I just feel like her ability's a little bit whereas Krennic overall out of the 3 is the best. But I don't think he's the most fun. And I actually think that out of Palpatine and Iden, Palpatine beats that Krennic deck more than Iden does. Because if you're flipping a Palpatine against my Krennic deck, I'm going, well, there goes my Vader. But if you're flipping an Iden against my Krennic deck, I go, take down. Or I just, swing into her with something, and then, man, I could overwhelming barrage my Krennic, ping the shield off her, and then just kill her with Cargo Juggernaut.
Good.
What's she gonna do? Stop me?
No, but there's a lot of, like, that whole package is A, very good, and B, it has a lot of different ways to play it. Find your own way. Do your own thing.
Go your own way.
We get demonetized.
True.
We don't get monetized.
We're not monetized. I love it.
It's like I automatically went to that as if we actually get...
Fleetwood Mac!
You can say Fleetwood Mac as much as you want. No one's paying us.
Except for you. You pay us in love and admiration and...
Speaking of love and admiration and things that did way better than we expected them to.
Wahoo! It's Tarkin time!
It's Tarkin time.
Did not expect this.
Tarkin Troopers is one of the first decks that
We ever
really
played-
kind of
It's also
came
one of the
up
first
and
decks
one of
we
the first
ever
decks we ever played. And it has gotten better and better and better and better and better as it's gone on.
I think... Am I the only one that's played it on gameplay in the channel?
No,
You guys tell us if
I've
we're
played
wrong.
the deck. I don't know if I've played
He's
it on
played
camera.
the deck, but I don't think it's been played on camera. I brought the deck a couple of times, and I must say, Vader really makes it a lot better.
Vader is a very good card, funnily enough. Hence why it's $100.
There's like one big thing I found with Tarkin is that if you got controlled early game, yeah, you were getting damage in here and there, but then you just fizzle out. Vader stops it. I play Vader, I get 3 boys out, I get 2 boys out. I could, like, one card I really underappreciated but thought I would give a go, and he turned out way better than I thought, was Admiral Ozzel. I actually really enjoy turn 2. Like, if I'm going first, I Ozzel, turn 2, Snowtrooper Lieutenant 4, just with the Trooper Lieutenant, and then you have one left over to buff the Snowtrooper to a 3/3 for the next turn. That's pretty great, actually.
Yeah, there's definitely some really interesting plays that you can do and some really interesting things. I think one of the things that can never be underestimated, we've talked about this from the very beginning, is leader abilities that are just generically good and consistently good.
Any Imperial. 4/1, any Imperial.
Yeah.
Meh.
Give it a +1/+1. Like, it's very good and it works very well and it does exactly what it wants to do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I didn't get my Traitoruses in the second game that we played. And he was able to just buff up that Ozzel to be an absolute beast. We swing at a 9, and I didn't get my takedowns, I didn't get my vanquishes.
Big Oz.
Like
that
so
came
it
out
was
of
just,
nowhere.
Yeah, it was a situation where it was just crazy, and he just swung for massive damage. There's nothing I could do to stop him. And I think that's one of the things about Tarkin. Like, he runs a lot of those small, low-cost troopers. He's playing the Shore Trooper. He's playing the Ozzel. He's playing the First Order
Death Star
Stormtrooper.
First Legion Snowtrooper.
First Legion Snowtrooper.
They're all here. And I got Taj. I got Big Teasy telling the boys that they better hit the gym.
Yeah, and they do. They hit the gym, and they hit the gym quick. On turn 4, on the turn that you flip Tarkin, playing out 2 things, flipping tapping, putting an XP on something.
Yeah.
Like, if you've got stuff, you've probably got stuff on board already.
I'm pretty sure there was a turn there where I went pay 2, Snowtrooper Lieutenant, pay 1, put a counter on him. First Legion, put a counter on him. Taj, flip Tarkin, swing, and then that's a board of a what was he, a 4/5, a 3/3, and a 2/7.
Yeah,
and they're all just getting bigger next turn.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about Tarkin is there's that thing of like, oh, I can get him next turn.
You can't.
But you can't. He just constantly grows, and he constantly gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
One piece of advice I'll give to anyone who's prospectively going to play this Tarkin deck, because I'll tell you, it's really fun. Don't expect it to win big events, but I think it's really fun. Don't go tall. I know I went tall with Ozzel, but that's because I didn't really have another choice. Go wide, spread the counters. You want to play 3 units and have a counter on all of them before you start doubling up those tokens. Yeah. Because you then put the onus in your opponent's hands of going, hey, check out, my 3/3/3s, kill one of them, I make one a 4/4.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then it's just like they end up missing out. And I would also say a lot of the time, before you do anything, swing. Swing with your guys with counters on them. It's okay to miss out on that 1 point of damage. Yeah. You would rather get the 3 in, the 4 in, the 2 in than you would the 1. Yeah. So it's okay to prep. And interestingly enough, a tapped unit is less appealing removal than an untapped unit. So swinging with them all first and then planning your plays around that. A couple of interesting inclusions in this deck that I've chosen to run is Traitorous, because I think that card is bonkers good. especially on the turn you flip Tarkin, if you're able to... There's a lot of Imperials in the game right now. You can steal your opponent's Imperial cards and buff them. You can steal your opponent's wing-leaded A-wing, and then that's just good. You can steal a lot of generally good cards, or steal cards that you're happy to waste as double trades. You can 2-for-1 your opponent with their own cards. And then I am running 2 precision strikes because a lot of big sentinels, and you might just need to close out the game in that small part. A lot of the time, even if you can't like get the +2 from being a trooper, just swinging with Saboteur is really nice. So getting that extra damage in there is always good. And then, of course, Vader, Ruthless Raiders, just to close out the game. And then generally, troopers galore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the big things about this deck, and something that you need to probably look into when you're playing this deck, is a very key part of this deck is knowing your breakpoint knowledge.
Yeah.
Knowing when a +1/+1 counter is okay and gives you 1 extra damage, and when a +1/+1 counter ruins every single plan your opponent's just made for that turn.
Yeah.
It's one of the most important decks to be really aware of where those breakpoints are, how much damage your opponent can do, and what giving a +1/+1 token to what unit actually means for the course of the rest of the turn.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can take a unit out of takedown range.
You can take it out of takedown range, you can take it out of swinging into it range. There's a lot of the time your opponents will plan around what they currently are and learning on what, trying to figure out what they can do, and then stopping that by being like, actually he's +1. They go, oh, I was just going to swing into him and then I was going to do this. And you're like, well, now if you swing into him, you die, but I live. So
now you're not going to do that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, and then they can be like, oh, fine, I'll just play this. And you're like, awesome, you just left all my units open and you didn't remove anything. Swing, 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 swing.
Not to mention, it also has a nice little removal package. Open fire, Force Choke is nuts, and Overwhelming Barrage. I think 6 of those removal cards are clearly better than the others. Like, Open Fire is nice, Open Fire is fine. Force Choke is busted, and Overwhelming Barrage is cooked.
Yeah, absolutely. Force Choke is one of those cards that you don't need a Force unit.
Just pay 2 for 5 damage.
And at the end of the day, giving your opponent a card in hand is...
It's not going to matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay,
Especially in a deck
just a
like
better
this.
bounce.
Especially in a deck like this where your opponent draws that card. If it's removal, what are they going to kill? Your Death Star Stormtrooper? Nice. I'll play another one. Like, it's interesting the way and the avenues that this deck can take. And I really like it. I think it's really, really good. I like the way that it pivots to aggro. I like the explosive damage that it's got for it. I think it's pretty solid. I actually, I might run this at my locals coming up and just see how it actually tests against a couple of other decks and see how we go, because it's a lot of fun. And I think Tarkin Troopers now, with the added benefits of having cards like Vader's and things like that, gets it to the point where it needs to be. Absolutely.
I think that deck is really interesting in the way that it does things, and is a classic. Right, it's a classic from way back from the beginning. If you've been playing for a while, you know this deck inside and out. And it's just gotten, as I said before, it's just gotten better and better and better.
It's also easy to build. If you don't have Vaders, you can still kind of build it without them. Like, of course, the deck's elevated to a whole new level by having them. Like, I won't lie to you. If you want to run it semi-competitively, Vaders are 100% an include. But if you don't mind too much and you're happy to steal wins from your friends here or there, you don't need them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where the deck's main thing functions without Vader. Vader just bumps it up to the next level.
Yeah, it makes it like...
And Vader is one of those things that makes the includes of the Death Star Stormtrooper and the TIE Island Fighter
Getting 3 cards
so
out.
good. Just being able to be like, oh, here's my Shore Trooper and my Death Star Stormtrooper.
Most
is so
of the
huge.
curve of the deck is 2. So being able to have 6 1-drops in there that are Imperials and getting them out to be able to buff them here or there. Because, playing a Vader and getting a Shore Trooper and then getting a Death Star Trooper and then swinging Tarkin to buff the Death Star Stormtrooper and just going 4 damage, 2 4-damage boys.
Yeah. And one of the great things about Tarkin is he turns those 1-drops into 2-drops anyway.
Yeah.
He turns it into a 4/2 Death Star Stormtrooper. He turns it into a 3/2 space unit. Right? It turns it into perfectly happy to play 2-drops.
Yeah, for sure.
For those turn 1 play.
I really like like, I do think because of how scarce space units can be, I think that the TIE Fighter turn 1 bumping it up is like such a good play.
It's certainly terrifying, especially when you get later in the game and you're starting to drop those advanced TIEs, which then are buffing everything up more, and you got Tajas coming out, and the amount of XP tokens that are flying around on this, you only need 2 token packs to keep up with it. 2
token packs! That's a Vader's worth of tokens. In AUD. But I will say I was pleasantly surprised. I think Tarkin Troopers had a bit of up and down career on this channel. It's lost a lot of games, it's won a couple games, but I think with the added cards and the set fully out, it has a platform. I think one of the biggest things, I will say this, that I think was a huge trap, and I'm glad I took it out, was Two Tubes and Partisan Insurgents. Because their damage relies solely on having other units, and yeah, you're going to have other units, but you don't want that. Yeah. You don't want to have to plan your turns around being like, okay, if this guy lives. Your turn shouldn't be if this guy lives. Your turn should be, Trooper, get out there and fight for the Empire. Give your life for your Emperor. Things like that.
Absolutely, and just all the troopers are just so great in that
They're
deck,
awesome.
and they
troopers also look cool. Like, everything aside, one of the coolest things in Star Wars is the troopers, right? Like, I've been talking about this over the last couple of days because I finished Andor.
He does like talking about this.
And was like, I'm gonna watch Rogue One. And then I saw the Shore Troopers again, and I was like, man, they look so sick. So I bought some Star Wars Legion stuff to paint up, which we're picking up tomorrow. And it's all troopers. Because I think they just look sick. They look awesome.
They look really good.
And snow troopers look cool, storm troopers look cool, death troopers look cool. And just being able to play like an army of these like faceless, bulky guys. And then you get out your officials here or there, your admirals. And it really feels thematic to be like, the first wave of stormtroopers land with Ozzel and Taj at the helm. Then Tarkin comes out to oversee the project. And then if the tide of the battle changes, well, Lord Vader is here to bring reinforcements. And it feels really cool and it feels really thematic.
And I think one of the big things about this deck as well is we're going to get troopers. We're going to get Imperials.
Mark my words, set 2. Literally set 2. If we don't see a Dark Trooper, I'm rioting.
Yeah, we already know that the Gideon is coming in set 2 from the starter decks.
And I personally have a theory that is going to be a trooper-based one. My claim to back that up is that the background art of his card has troopers in it, which could be so wrong.
My sources trust me, bro.
Yeah, literally. Sources, I made it up. But at the end of the day, like, notably off the top of our head, right, all the Bad Batch of troopers.
Yep.
If Crosshair, spoilers, if Crosshair is a villain in the set, he's going to be a trooper for villains. Yeah. If we get Imperial Remnant from the Mandalorian, what are they going to be? They're going to be Imperial troopers. Like, this deck just gets better. And I'm interested to see if next set, if Moff Gideon replaces Tarkin. And seeing if we can get a new trooper deck with that going. But
he might, but at the end of the day, Tarkin is just going to be that
good.
So generically
so good. He's so, like, just putting an experience counter on a guy.
On a guy?
And just like,
on a fella.
Just putting him up a break point, or just putting him at an inconvenient damage point, or even just going, I put a counter on this guy for 1, and your opponent goes, ugh, takedown. They just use 4 resources and use 1. They just play another guy.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the time where we get a legendary trooper coming in that's like a 3/5. Like just a 3/5 with like...
Phasma?
Phasma?
Phasma? Next set, Force Awakens.
Phasma?
Ooh. Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. Your dark side powers can't
It would be very good because even a slightly worse ability than Boba with a 3/5 stat line...
Yeah, literally, could you just imagine a 3/5 Imperial trooper?
Mm-hmm. I can imagine it. It's gross. I hate it.
I love it.
Make it 3 cost too.
Yeah, just like...
And just...
Oh. When we round back around, give me an ERG, but make it a Death Trooper and make it if my leader's Krennic. You know what would be actually disgusting? If we got like if we got a 2/6 3-drop, if your leader's a Krennic Sentinel.
Is that him making gross cards that are never going to exist in the game, so you don't have to worry about it.
They never exist, but
at the end of the day, this deck is a lot of fun, and it's very fun.
Yes.
Like, they're very cool to play, and it's one of the most thematic decks in the game, I would say.
Now, there are 2 other green leaders. One's very thematic as well. Mm-hmm. I guess both of them are also actually really thematic
quite
too.
Thematic, yeah. We have Hera, which is the Spectres
We'll
deck.
brush over Hera quickly.
It is...
It's fun. I built it. I had to. And I've played it. I've won here. I've lost there. The deck has some synergies, and frankly, is really fun. If you like Spectres like I like Spectres, build the deck. One thing I will say is that Hera is an awesome Twin Suns leader because you get access to all the Spectres. You can put in a bunch of really cool, unique units. I, for one, kind of like her with Chirrut, because she can buff Chirrut to get him out of ranges, and then also you get access to, just all the Spectres, and they're generically good. I mean, why wouldn't you run Kanan? But she's fun. The deck is fun. You're probably not going to win any tournaments with it, but if you like Spectres and you're here for Star Wars Unlimited to play some thematic decks with leaders you love, then this is the deck for you. It's really fun. You get your Spectres. You feel like you're living out Rebels. Moving on to a deck that is thematic, but also, oh my god, it's Christmas Leia.
Absolutely. This deck is one of the highest decks in the meta at the moment. It's only really beaten out in the aggro department by Sabine.
Sabine's just more consistent.
Just a little bit.
Leia's more explosive.
Yeah, absolutely. And this deck is exactly what you know it is, and exactly what. And one of the reasons why we didn't pick it is because you know what Leia is.
You've seen it.
Leia is the extreme aggro deck that likes to go swing, 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 swing for a cause I believe in. K2SO, I win. Anyway, game 2, you're like, what happened? What's going on?
I'm too weak.
Palpatine sits there being like, it's still 3 turns till I flip. They go, yeah, but game 2?
Game 2. I love turn 6. Sorry, turn 4. Turn 5. For a cause. For a cause?
I believe in it.
GGWP?
It's the deck of burn, essentially.
Yeah.
It's the deck of burn and the deck of being able to finish off
The
games.
deck just needs to get your opponent into the range where you can K2 and for a cause them. The amount of games that I've played against people and have won or lost because I'm at 3 life and I'm like, okay, I'm going to stabilize, and then they just go pay 4K2 and I go, haha.
Yep. Absolutely. It happens all the time, and it's one of those things that's really hard to...
Just get around. Just deal with.
Yeah. It's one of those things that is really hard to deal with, but
good thing he's a legendary, right? K2SO is a legendary, right? Right, so he's difficult to get because he's a legendary? Oh, wait. K2SO is a rare! Star Wars Unlimited has a... the devs told us from the beginning, to be fair.
K2SO
should be a legendary.
is an uncommon?
He's a rare.
He's a rare?
He's a rare.
He's a rare.
He's a rare, but we have so many of them that it feels uncommon. I see a lot of K2s. I don't think anyone... I think people are having harder times getting red 3s than they are K2s. Star Wars Unlimited... The devs told us, but Star Wars Unlimited has already a good habit of making cards that are mechanically unique and powerful in slots that aren't legendary. And you know what that is? That is a great thing.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a great thing.
And I'll tell you what, this Leia deck... There's no legendaries in it.
No.
You want to build this Leia deck? You get your uncommons, you get your rares, and you go, there it is. Have fun, enjoy yourself, kick some absolute butt because you will.
And most of your rares are red 3, K2, for a cause.
Yep.
If you can get those 9 rares, any other rares you can substitute. Because, man, is this deck fire. Rebel Assaults, Fleet Lieutenants, Wing Leaders, A-Wings, Sabines,
Battle for Marine, Echo-Based Defender.
Echo-Based Defender, getting them out there, getting them in there, and bringing the Rebel heat. Another thematic game, another thematic deck that really exemplifies the kind of hit-and-run, explosive tactics of the Rebels compared to the consistent onward march that Tarkin brings of just damage and trooper and damage and trooper. Leia is like, well, you can probably remove my guys, but here's 15 damage before you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those decks where like, okay, I can probably take 2 of these hits. So I'll let them, like, they got the initiative, they'll swing with 1, I'll remove 1, they'll swing the other, and I should be good. And they go, Rebel Assault, swing with this, swing with Leia, swing with this, and...
and you just go, ah!
Yeah, and it's like, that's...
The Rebels have set their bombs on the beaches of Scarif, and they're blowing it up
Yeah, absolutely, and it's one of those things that's just like, the amount of explosive damage that can come out of this deck is almost unbeatable, like, almost unparalleled.
It's unprecedented. It's currently... In my opinion, if you want to play a deck that just, like, explosive turns of just crazy damage, Leia's the deck for you, and she's cheap. I went to a excuse me. I went to a draft, and I just built pretty much the deck.
Pretty much the entire deck.
And then we went to a draft the day after, and my friend built just pretty much the entire deck. You know, because it's all commons.
It's
mostly
commons.
You get 9 commons in a pack.
Yeah. It's one of those cases where, like, you got the Battlefield Marine, you got the K2, you got the Battlefield Marine, you got the Echo Base, you got the A-Wings, you got the Wing Leaders, you got the Sabines.
You got the Fleet Lieutenants.
And you got the Fleet Lieutenants, and you have the deck. Like, the K2SOs are nice,
Did you
and the
get
4 Claws I believe
Did you get maybe like 2 Rebel Assaults from your uncommons? Great. Nice.
You're
Let's go.
Done. Like, you're good. And so it's one of the easiest deck builds. Probably one of the reasons why you're seeing this deck so much. Because everyone's looking to play good decks. You don't want to play objectively bad decks. It's just not how we roll. But at the end of the day, this is one of the best decks. That is one of the cheapest to build. And it was that or Sabine. And both are equally valid.
Both are great. And again, it needs to be said. Good job, Star Wars Unlimited. I'm new to the game, and the secondary market scares me because cards like Vader and Boba are expensive. Well, don't you worry, because there's cheap meta decks out there that consistently beat those decks. It's Leia and Sabine. You barely need to spend any money on it, and then you've got a full deck. Like, I've been able to help, like, 3 of my friends because I just have so many of the cards. I can just be like, here's your Leia deck, here's your Leia deck, here's your Leia deck. Like, we opened 10 boxes, combined between us, we have enough, and I've still got leftovers ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those cases where we're going to see more coming in the future as well. Yeah. I think it's a lot of fun.
We're not going to not see Rebels.
Green in general is a really interesting color. The kind of both kind of go wide strategies of, and one of the big things that they talked about is relying on units on board, which both sides do.
Yeah.
Tarkin to build them up, Leia to kind of swing with multiple things. Yeah. The Green's reliance on units on board is really interesting. And where that goes in the future is going to be really interesting too. When we see that Moff Gideon, when we see...
Every single Green leader in the game, every single one cares about having units on board.
Yeah.
Palpatine to kill them and draw, Tarkin to buff them, Hera to buff them, and Leia to swing with them.
And I think that's going to keep going, and I think we're going to keep seeing that as we move into set 2, probably in more subtle ways as we go and go and go. Obviously, lines get merged and things
I don't know if it's going to be subtle. I mean, you tell me if we get a clone Commander Cody in green in set 3, and it's not just all about the clones all the time.
It may well be. Maybe getting Gideon next set. Hey, we know he's most likely going to be green.
Are we getting Hunter next set? That's what I want to know. Hunter from the Bad Batch.
Yep, we are.
I know we are, but is he going to be a leader?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Probably.
Yes,
he's probably going to be a leader.
Yes, he is a leader.
Yeah, he's going to be a leader.
Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Hopefully next set we get as lucky as we did with leaders in the first set in our guessing game. Remember when we guessed Cassian Andor?
Yeah.
For a cause he believes in.
Guessed perfectly, Cassian. But you're going to have to wait for that kind of predictions because that's going to be coming in the future when we take a guess as to what's going to be coming in set 2. Look forward to that in the future.
I'm very excited to kind of run down that video, but we're going to do that closer to when the set 2
it's going to be revealed.
Me personally, I think I kind of want to do that video after we see the starter deck, and that way we can maybe get a bit of an idea as to what's coming, but it depends. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. Go check out the gameplay. It was really good. And next week, tune in for a bit of that yellow love when we play Cunning.
Oh boy, do we.
We love you. You love us.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.